We are going to call to order. It is Monday, January the 8th. It is 6 p.m. We are meeting as the West Lafayette Community School Corporation Board of School Trustees. This is our annual organizational meeting. That is just a meeting of the board to organize ourselves for the 2024 year that is held here in public. So with that, I've called to order, and now we're going to go through approval of the agenda for tonight's organizational meeting. As I explained to everybody in our December meeting, all of this is really dictated by law, what we're required to do at this very first meeting of the year. And so anybody have any changes or additions to the agenda for tonight's meeting? I'm sorry. Can I take a motion, please? Moved by Mrs. Austin, second by Mr. Marley. Any questions or comments about the agenda? Mr. Wong.
Yeah, as we talk, I just wondering maybe we should have public comments before these meetings. I mean, my understanding of Indiana code is public comments should be before any board final decision. When you say final decision means the votings. So that's just some questions. Thank you.
This is one of those meetings that is an exception to that. The content for this particular agenda was provided, or the outline for this was provided by the ISBA. I forwarded that to Mrs. Julian, and Mrs. Julian and Dr. Greiner used that content provided by the ISBA to generate this agenda to make sure that everything was covered that we're legally obliged to cover. So I need to go grab the list, but I don't believe there was anyone signed up for public comment, but let me go grab that. Thank you. I do have 2 people signed up for public comment, but those would happen in the public comment period of the regular board meeting. Any other questions about tonight's agenda or the organizational meeting? Okay, all those in favor of approval of tonight's organizational meeting agenda, please indicate with a show of hands. That motion carries 7-0, Mrs. Julian. So as is the protocol, I, as the current president, open the elections for the 2024 president, also known as the board chair. Those phrases are interchangeable. And so with that, I will just open up the floor for nominations. If anyone would like to nominate another member to serve as the board chair. Mrs. Mumford.
I'd like to nominate Lawrence Wong as the board chair. He would be a great unifier of the board. He served as chair.
Okay, Mrs. Mumford has nominated Mr. Wong as the board chair. Does anybody have any other nominations? Mrs. Austin.
I'd like to nominate
Mrs. Austin has nominated herself for board chair. Okay. Mrs. Austin, do you have any statement to make about that?
I have served on the board for 3 years. I've taken a great deal of training, and I believe that my previous experience as a debate team member will help with my knowledge of parliamentary procedure and Robert's rules, and I believe I would do a good job of filling your big shoes.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other nominations for board chair? Okay, just as a reminder, this is a board majority vote, so whichever candidate, Mr. Wong or Mrs. Austin, who would win the majority of votes, would immediately begin service as the board chair. I apologize, Mr. Wong, I did not ask you if you are willing to accept the nomination Mrs. Mumford has given.
Yes,
Yes, okay, and did you have any statement you wanted to make about that?
yeah, I'm trying to serve with other board members, our schools, and I'm trying to make our board more unified so we can work together to serve our school and student and our community better.
Okay.
That's all. Yes,
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Apologize for skipping over that
that's
acceptance.
okay. No problem.
We only do these once a year, and It gives you time to forget in between. Okay, so with that, we will take a vote. The first candidate would be Lawrence Wong. All of those in favor of Mr. Wong proceeding as the board chair for 2024, please indicate with a show of hands.
Any discussion or second? And for this nomination, I remember last year we had a second, also we had discussion or something like that. And so we just go ahead and do the vote. This year, I wonder what's the right procedure.
Let's be consistent with last year. That's a good decision. So thank you for that correction, Dr. Yin. Let's start with the nomination for Mr. Wong. Mrs. Mumford has, or Mrs. Mumford, excuse me, has nominated Mr. Wong. Mr. Wong has accepted the nomination. Is there a second for that nomination?
Yeah,
Dr. Yin, are you seconding?
Right, I will second it.
Okay.
May I see any justification for my second?
Yep, I'm just moving through the motions and then I'll ask you that question.
Okay,
Sorry.
thanks.
My apologies, it's a little disjointed tonight. Dr. Yin, did you have any comment that you wanted to give about Mr. Wong's nomination?
Sure. And yeah, I noticed that Mr. Wang worked diligently in the past year, and he actively attended many trainings offered by the ISBA, the Indiana Board Association, and he studied all the documents very, very carefully. And so I noticed for many of those issues, he dig into the law and study historical documents, and so every time he's well prepared, and I'm very impressed. And also, I think what else? And so he doesn't play side, and so when he votes, and he votes to vote for the decision that best represent the community. And I'm also very impressed by that. And actually during the break, I studied the split votes and in the past year, and I summarized them and figure out the pattern for the split votes. And apparently we got a lot of 4 versus 3 split votes. I think it would be nice to have officers that can represent the 2 groups, so that way we will have a more unified voice from the board. And because one problem I noticed is, when in the case only the 4 board members are the officers, and many of the decisions presented to us to vote didn't incorporate the perspectives of the other 3 board members, that can be problematic. So if the other 3 board members have the voice before in those decisions or proposals that presented to the whole board, I think when we vote on it, and it will be more likely for us to agree on it. And so that from that perspective, and I feel it would be nice to have a unifier, to have somebody who can connect both sides, and so we can have a unified voice, and so to better represent the community.
Okay.
And there are many evidence that I feel Mr. Wang can play that role to unify the whole board, and rather than playing a side, just take a side.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else, any comments on Mr. Wong's nomination? Okay, Mrs. Mumford, or Mrs. Austin has nominated herself. Is there a second for that nomination?
Second.
Second by Mr. Marley. Mr. Marley, would you like to speak to that nomination?
Yes, I've worked with Amy for over the last 3 years, and she was an interested parent participant well before she became a part of the school board. And I've always appreciated that perspective that she brings to the table. She's easy to understand, open for feedback and communication. and quite frankly, easy to work with. Not to mention the fact that she has over 3 years of experience on our board, and she has included herself in all the training that's available through the ISBA, which is much appreciated. So, thank you.
Any other comments about Mrs. Austin's nomination? Okay, with that, let's go forward with the vote. Again, this is just a simple vote, simple majority places the president. All of those in favor of Mr. Wong as the board chair, please indicate with a show of hands. Please note that Dr. Yin, and Mr. Wong, and Mrs. Mumford vote in the affirmative. For Mr. Wong, all of those in favor of Mrs. Austin as the board chair, please indicate with a show of hands. Please note that Mr. Marley, Mr. Schott, and Mrs. Austin vote for Mrs. Austin, and I will tie break that as a majority for Mrs. Austin. With that, Mrs. Austin is the board chair for the 2024 school year, or 2024 calendar year, excuse me, and I am officially not the board chair. So I will trade seats with you if you would like. And you can proceed on with the rest of the elections. Good luck to you. It's not really a luck thing, but good luck.
Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate your mentorship. And before we proceed, I would just like to acknowledge the 3-4 vote. And as one of our community members stated a couple of months ago, this board has been divided, and I acknowledge my own part in that. And I would like to assure those who didn't vote for me that I will do my very best to represent all of us and to hear your concerns and to work with you as partners as we go forward. I hope that by my leadership, we can leave the 4-3 thing behind. That said, I would like to move forward with the election of the vice president. Is there a nomination? Mrs. Witt nominates Brad Marley. Mr. Marley, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any other? Second? Thank you, Mr. Schott. Are there any other nominations for vice president? Dr. Yin?
I'll nominate Mr. Wang for the reason I just explained. By the way, I appreciate that you determined to unify the board and to hear different voices. I really, truly appreciate that. Thanks.
You. Mr. Wong, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second? Great. Mrs. Mumford seconds. Is there discussion?
I would like to speak to Mr. Marley's qualifications.
I want to grab that. I can't.
Okay.
I'm right here.
I have been on the board 10 years and have had the honor of working with Mr. Marley through that period of time. And in the past 2 years as vice president, his historical knowledge and also interest in the community and community engagement are a very important part of the work of the board that perhaps doesn't always show up in these meetings, but he's played a very integral role with a lot of our development with the city and county and law enforcement, and I would very much appreciate him continuing in that role for those external reasons.
Thank you.
As well as the internal ones.
Any other discussion about the vice president candidates before we vote? Mrs. Mumford?
I would just like to say that having Mr. Wong as vice president would definitely show our community that we're willing to work together instead of having all officers on more of the same views. So I think that this would be a great opportunity to include some other perspectives in board officers, as has not been done in the past.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, all in favor of Mr. Marley as vice president for the 2024 calendar year, please indicate with your hand raised. Mr. Schott, Mr. Marley, and Mrs. Witt all voted in the affirmative, and you can add me to that list also, Roberta. And all those in favor of Mr. Wong as vice president. That's Dr. Yin, Mr. Wong, and Mrs. Mumford. So Mr. Marley, you will continue as our vice president. Thank you. Moving on now to the secretary position. I am ready for a nomination. Mr. Wong?
Yeah, we'll nominate Deja Mumford as secretary.
Okay, do you accept the nomination? Okay, is there a second? Dr.
And
Yin?
yeah, Deja has been writing meeting summaries since at the end of 2020. So far, that has been 3 years, and she has been writing very informative and detailed meeting minutes for all the board meetings and the work sessions that is open to the public. And I think that's very helpful. And for us, we already, I noticed that we have made a lot of progress in the meeting minutes. Now the meeting minutes are more detailed than before. By the way, thank you, Amy, for that. And also for Mr. Wang and Mr. Meffers to keep promoting more detailed minutes, and appreciate that. But I think if Deja can be officially the secretary and for the whole board, I think the meeting minutes can be further improved and be more transparent and more informative, and to benefit the public.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Did we have a second on Mrs. Mumford's nomination, or was that just the motion? I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry, got it. Thank you. And is there any other nomination for? I'll nominate Tom Schott. Okay. Mr. Marley nominates Mr. Schott. Is there a second? Mrs. Witt seconds. Discussion, please. Mr. Marley?
Yeah, I've worked with Tom for, 8 years now, over that. We used to coach together. Kids grew up together, was down the street. Beyond that, though, Tom is a voice of reason, a very level and even approach to all things pertaining to the board and the corporation. I really believe that he has a vested interest in our students and our academic program. In fact, his spouse is employed by our school corporation. But most of all, I appreciate Tom's professionalism in working with him over these many years. That's why I have a confidence for him to continue to be secretary. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Rachel?
Please. It seems to be that there's some implication, it's not implication, it's stated that there's more diversity in terms of the 4-3 membership, and that should be necessary for the board officers to operate well. I would like to just propose an alternate viewpoint, and that is that experience lends greatly to the officer's role. And in the case of Mr. Schott, he has been the secretary before and has that experience. And I have witnessed myself through his communication with me that he is quite happy to tell me when I have spoken too much, which I think is an important part of balance in your officer group and of experience. And so though it is difficult, and I understand, I appreciate Dr. Yin's articulate explanation of balance among viewpoints. I do believe that, for me, experience is a greater weight to my decision-making and my vote. And I do believe that Mr. Schott, Mr. Marley, and Mrs. Austin, you're all able to also navigate a more cohesive and agreeable board officer slate. So,
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor of Mrs. Mumford as the 2024 secretary, please raise your hand. Mrs. Mumford, Mr. Wong, and Dr. Yin, and all those in favor of Mr. Schott as secretary, Mrs. Witt, Mr. Schott, and Mr. Marley, and myself. So Mr. Schott will return to his position as secretary. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the seating of the board president. So there, okay, got it. Now we'll do the board appointments for 2024. The first one is the appointment of the corporation treasurer, Mrs. Kronk. Can I get a motion, please? Second. Moved by Mrs. Witt, seconded by Mr. Marley. Mrs. Kronk, would you like to explain?
It's just an annual thing that the State Board of Accounts and the legislature, it says it's a requirement of school corporations to do every year.
Thank you. Any discussion? We appreciate you. All right, all those in favor of appointing Mrs. Kronk back to her position as corporation treasurer, please raise your hands. That motion passes 7-0. Moving on, the bonded positions for the school corporation, we'll take these as a group, correct? So the treasurer is bonded for $100,000, the deputy treasurer also, then the extracurricular accounts treasurer and the athletic secretary are both bonded at $25,000. I need a motion, please. Moved by Mr. Schott, seconded by Mr. Marley. Discussion?
Just, but first of all, yeah, I didn't get time to say thank you, Michelle, for your professionalism and knowledge and patience, and you have been so helpful and appreciate that. And so for these treasurer bonded positions, I just, for the public information, I wonder whether you can kind of explain how they works and, what the amount of money means, yeah.
So basically, a bond is kind of like an insurance policy. The state Board of Accounts requires that anybody whose main job responsibility is dealing with money to be bonded as an additional insurance policy just in case something were to happen. And so obviously Janelle and I would be larger because we're over the corporation accounts, and then Leanne and Kathy deal with ECA. And so that's why theirs would be $25,000 instead.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, all those in favor of bonding these positions as stated, please indicate by raising your hands. That motion passes 7-0. Moving on, the appointment of our school corporation physicians, Dr. Chester Ho and Dr. Anne-Marie Bianculli. I need a motion. Moved by Mrs. Witt, seconded by Mr. Wong. Any discussion on this item? Oh,
sorry.
Mrs.
I have a
Mumford, I'm
question.
sorry.
If I recall correctly, last year there had been a discussion because Dr. Ho has not lived in our school district for quite some time. So there'd been a discussion if they should continue trying to share that. Has there been any updated discussion about keeping him on even though he doesn't, he's not in our community?
Yes, the nurses feel pretty strongly still that he's a great resource and he's very connected, and when he comes, he's willing to come and talk with any of us. And Dr. Bianculli is also very supportive of, because it's a split stipend, they're willing to do that mainly out of the service to our community. So it works well for our principals and our nurses, and it works well for those two to be able to talk back and forth to one another too. So there's been discussion, but it's been more of, it's working really well. We're still willing to do this at a split stipend. So we're kind of getting two for the present one.
So the nurses haven't entertained it. So the nurses is kind of who's driving this decision and not interested in, if it's a split stipend, getting someone else that's local, or?
It's not really a driving, it's that it's working, so we haven't looked at anything differently. Yeah. There's not really a person driving it other than dialogue. How's it going? What do you prefer? This is working really well. Everybody feels that way. So we're not, that's why we don't bring a recommendation to do anything differently.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Yin?
So do they usually work remotely with our nurses anyway? So
Typically, yes. Yeah, they would work remotely. Email questions, sort of like when you're going back and forth with an attorney, most of the time that would be back and forth through email or through a phone call or through a text. I could pick up the phone right now and call Dr. Ho or respond to him in a text and he'd say, call me at this time. They're that accessible. So more so remotely, yes.
okay, so both of the doctors and the nurses like this arrangement. So that's why we do it this way, right? Oh,
Correct, yes.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay, all those in favor of continuing with the appointment of Dr. Ho and Dr. Bianculli, please indicate by raising your hands. Motion passes 7-0. Moving on to the appointment of the school attorney. Church, Hiddle, and Antrim. I need a motion. Moved by Mr. Marley. Second by Mrs. Witt. Discussion? Mr. Wong?
Yeah, I have a question. So basically, this appointment of school attorney kind of will continue the contract with the CCIJ, right? And my understanding is they are going to have more responsibilities regarding the policy management, right? So do we need to update the contract things for their kind of additional service?
Are you good with me speaking that, or do you?
Why don't you go ahead?
Okay, I didn't want to overstep.
Nope, you're good, sorry.
There are two different agreements. One is for the services of policy, and the other one is the retainer for legal, and that did not change. And then the services for policy there's no difference in what was presented to you, meaning the board.
We will have another kind of contract agreement for the board policy service.
Correct, two different
Okay.
agreements.
Gotcha.
Yes.
And regarding the fee service, we are going to have the same fee structures with them for the legal service?
You good with me continue?
Yes, please.
That's correct. Nothing changes. Fee-wise.
Dr. Yin?
And
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Wong.
I'm done. Go ahead.
Okay. Dr. Yin?
Yeah, from the fee perspective, compared with the previous years, the previous legal service we had, I think this fee is so much more reasonable, and that's good news. And so from, for us to do the appointment, so I think there are two factors to consider. One is the quality of the service, the other is a fee. I think the fee part is really, really nice. It's just a small fraction of probably 10% of the original cost we had before. And then for the service part, I just wonder typically who they work with, and are those people happy with their service? Because if we don't have that information, we are kind of vote these on behalf of the people who receive the service, right? So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Please.
Mrs. Witt, would you like to address?
I would speak from the former board chair position, Dr. Yin. The board chair does work with the legal counsel on matters pertaining to the superintendent's performance evaluation contract, as well had been drawn into different litigation issues, or potential litigation issues, I should say. And I would just give you my feedback that I have found Jessie from Church, Hiddle, and Antrim to be very responsive, very detailed, and very balanced in her response in terms of offering facts and offering a couple of possible solutions, and really explaining how the process would work in a very clear, articulate way. So that has been my experience working with her over the past 2 years.
I would echo, as the superintendent, if I text her, she instantly gets back with me, and then we set up a time to call. She's very accessible. We have Zoom meetings when necessary. If a principal has a question, they'll get with me. I'll get with her, and she'll quickly get right back. So for me, I've been very pleased with her service and availability.
okay, great. Thank you. That's very helpful.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have any discussion on this item? Okay. All those in favor of approving Church, Hiddle, and Antrim for our attorney, please raise your hand. All opposed, or that passes 7-0. I'm not counting myself. Okay, moving on to item number 3, other business. The board compensation is set by Indiana code at $2,000 per year per board member plus $112 per meeting. We approve this annually. I need a motion, please. Moved by Mrs. Witt, seconded by Mr. Marley. Is there discussion? Mrs. Mumford?
I had a question on the amount that we're paid for work sessions and executive sessions, and would like to recommend that we remove that part of the $62 per meeting, because it's caused a lot of issues as we've tried to schedule meetings. It's been restrictive, as people are saying, we don't want to charge the school district extra, so let's have 3 meetings in one night, or what if we do this? And I think that if we can be paid just a set fee and not be messing with this other per meeting fee, that it will actually make our job simpler in scheduling these separate meetings.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, you would like to move to amend the board compensation to $2,000. Could you?
Yes. Well, I mean, honestly, it's what people, because there's no work session, we never could discuss this, but $2,000 per year plus the $112 per regular meeting would be fine, or just doing $2,000 per year would also be fine. I just find that these being paid per meeting, especially the $62 at the end, has really made things more complicated.
All right, so which one would you like to propose to amend to?
I would love to hear feedback before I make a motion.
Okay,
if
that's
okay.
fine. Anyone like to discuss, Mrs. Witt?
I would just like to point out to you that it's not just about board members' time and scheduling. It is often about our staff members' time and scheduling. And when we are able to consolidate our meetings into one night, which is what this structure promotes, then we are able to also make best use of our staff members' time. And so that for me, the compensation is what it is. But the concern for me is that meetings be scheduled efficiently in ways that allow for best use of staff's time. And the board would hopefully be compliant around that.
Thank you.
So I guess I have
No compensation for our session, but I think for transparency and keeping up with code, we should stick with the normal 112 otherwise. But if people think that 62 is why we're not having work sessions, I would support not being paid for those.
Okay, does anyone else? Mrs. Mumford?
Yeah, so I'd like to make a motion to have the board compensation be $2,000 per year, and then for the regular school board meetings, 112, but remove the 62. With the mindset of, I agree with Ms. Witt that we're very mindful, I want to be very mindful of our staff and not have unnecessary meetings, but I would like it to be that the need is driving it and not the money, so.
Okay. In reviewing this, what it says is if the executive session and the work session meetings are held on different nights than the regular school board meeting, board members are paid at $62 per meeting. So I think what they're trying to avoid here, and maybe Mrs. Julian can help, is more than $112 meeting in a week. Is that how that works? And then if there's a work session in the same week, it's Mrs. Witt?
It is, as I understand it, the reason for the pay structure in this way is that it avoids a scenario where board members would be paid $112 for a regular meeting, $62 for a work session before, and $62 for an executive session after.
Right.
So it's trying to minimize so that basically board members receive payment per night, and that if it's not a regular meeting where presumably there's less preparation for the meeting, then there would be a smaller compensation for that meeting.
So my motion is to just be paid for a regular board meeting plus the per year, and whenever a work session or executive session is handled, there's no compensation involved with that.
Okay. So you would amend it to say plus $112 per meeting, limited to one meeting per day?
Just per regular meeting. We only get paid 112 for the regular meetings. The work session, executive sessions, there's no additional money coming in.
Okay.
I think it would be helpful, sorry to interrupt, it would be helpful if you gave her a specific line that you would strike out of
Okay,
that, so
yeah,
that she could
that's
look
fine.
at it by words.
Right.
That last sentence, just strike that entire last sentence. If executive session, work sessions are held on a different night, there's $62 per that. And so it would just be in regards to a regular board meeting is what the 112 is, and everything else does not get compensated for.
But it says board members will be paid at $62 per meeting for that evening. So for example, this evening we have 4 meetings. We have the executive session we had earlier, we have the organizational meeting, the regular meeting, and the finance meeting. And I think what it says is we'll be paid at $62 per meeting for that evening, regardless of how many meetings are scheduled back to back. So 4 times 62 is what will be paid this evening. So no.
Just 112 tonight.
Which 112, because the regular meeting night.
Okay. Mrs. Mumford has moved that we strike the last sentence of the board compensation. Is there a second? Mr. Wong seconds. All those in favor of, oh, yeah, of course, go ahead.
not to put more wrinkles in it, what if we kept it the way it is and all this additional $62 or $43 we donate to the foundation or back to the schools?
That's a nice idea. Mrs. Witt?
I was just going to ask, also, I know that this is driven by Indiana code and this is the maximum, or is it, this is the minimum? It could be, so I would want clarification on Indiana code that we could actually drop that last piece off. That part I would just
I think that's reasonable.
check. Given that we're not compensated until, but twice a year, is this one that we could send to committee? Or are we required to vote on it tonight?
I can't tell you that a lot of places do not pay per meeting, they just pay a flat amount per year. They don't
Okay,
pay-
so that is not a requirement.
I can't give you that information.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Yeah. I believe this is the max that you can do,
Okay.
as it's in state code, yeah.
So
Okay,
there's no,
Mr.
so
Wong?
I have a question, so there's no regulations ask people how to pay by some money, say $62. That's not the Indiana code required.
I'm sorry, could you repeat yourself?
So this payment, the compensation for the school board, say $62 per meeting is not required by Indiana code.
Apparently not.
Okay, yeah, that's- I think that's, yeah. Okay.
So all those in favor of striking the last sentence in the board compensation section, please indicate by raising your hand. Wait.
Want to talk about
Oh,
the donation?
Maybe that's a wrinkle we don't want to go to, just a generous thought. I might be more confusing and tough for you.
That I can actually foundation funds, so that
Right.
maybe
We would still do,
The way that would happen is you would donate it.
right.
Yeah, so it can be done, but it would be done in that the check would go to you and then you would donate it. Or you can write a memo requesting that we did use to donate. But
I think as long as there be something in writing,
yes, the issue too is then it becomes very uncomfortable for individuals that maybe didn't want to do that. Speaking here in public, I think it puts you guys on the spot. So it does simplify it, in my opinion, if you go with the recommendation that Mrs. Mumford is making to vote on either striking it or not striking it. I think it leaves putting you as a board individually.
That's right.
Does that make, yeah.
Makes sense. Definitely. Yeah, makes sense.
okay. Are we ready to vote then? All those in favor of striking that last sentence, please indicate by raised hand. Okay, that motion passes 7-0. So now we'll return to the original motion with the last section struck, and I've made a note so we can find that later. All those in, or do we need to discuss further on the original motion?
So now, and the payment will be 2,000 plus 112 times 12. Yeah,
I
so
believe
if we need more meetings, we just have more meetings, which will not cost our district more money. Okay,
Correct.
I think that's a good solution.
From a staff standpoint, it's another matter.
Yeah, it won't cost. No.
You mean the
We still have to pay the
Teachers.
employees of the corporation who show up for the meetings. It does save a little bit.
Say 6-7 members, $60, 500.
So if the meeting is required for other staff members to participate in, then we need to pay other staff members, but we,
It's their time. It more so. Yeah, it wouldn't be additional payment to those individuals. It would be their time.
Since we already voted on that, let's return to the
just
motion.
clarify, sorry.
Yep. So all those in favor of the amended motion, please raise your hands. Okay, that's 7-0. That was fun. Moving on to the Education Foundation appointment. Mr. Schott has represented us on the Education Foundation up to this point. Are you willing to continue, Mr.
Yes.
Schott? Okay, then I would like to move that we appoint you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Marley. Any discussion?
I guess I have a question how a president does this appointment immediately when you didn't know ahead of time you were going to be president. Like, this seems a lot of thinking or just saying, I want to stick with the status quo because I don't have time to think about it. But I don't know why this.
I've talked with Mr. Schott about the foundation before, and I know it's really
Okay.
important to him. And just like you had the opportunity to accept or not accept your nomination, he has the opportunity to accept or not accept
No,
his
I don't-
appointment. So if he didn't, for the continuity of the foundation, I think it's important to keep the same person on there. But if he, for some reason, had a conflict that night that had come up during the year, then I would probably ask for people who are interested to step up at that point.
Got it.
Dr. Yin?
So you mentioned the continuity, and so that can be one perspective. Another perspective will be, the importance of having fresh eyes sometimes. So from the at least from my department where I work in UIC, and the faculty members kind of take a turn to serve on different committees. So you get over time, you get familiar with the different committees, and you bring different perspectives to that committee. I think that's kind of helpful, and at least after several years, and it'll be helpful. I am not against Tom on this, but just in general, I feel it's helpful for people to rotate and to serve on different committees.
Okay,
So they
thank
can
you for
bring
your,
different perspectives, because sometimes over time you feel, you don't have the fresh eyes to look at the things. But for any committee and organization to keep improving, I think fresh eyes are helpful.
thank you for your comment. I actually served on the foundation my first year, which was 3 years ago, and I think 2 years ago as well. And then we switched when I took over the legislative. So he has been on it for a year, which I think is appropriate. Okay, all those in favor of appointing Tom? I'm sorry, Mr. Wong?
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with Dr. Yin. In the long run, I mean, I'm not against Tom. I think he's pretty good. I know everybody is serving that foundation, no problem. I'm just saying, in the long run, probably we have some people rotate, so everybody have a different perspective. When you sit in that serving that duties, you have different point of views, other than you not serve over there. So after people rotate around, so we will have each one from other people's perspective and the point of view, and with time going on, we can build up a unified board. So I think that will be, with school board will be better off in the long run. But I'm not against Tom. I think he served that committee very well, and that is, thank you.
Ms. Wade?
I would just like to speak about Mr. Schott's engagement with the Education Foundation. The WLSCF supports our schools in many ways, and many of those are organizational and fundraising efforts outside of this, such as the Scarlet and Gray dinner and some other fundraisers and other community organizations that they do, and those do require active engagement in the community, potential donors in the community and alumni, as well as evening and weekend events. And Mr. Schott has always been, in his time with the WLSCF, been very engaged in those, a very consistent attendee and supporter, and he knows the client base well. And so I, for those reasons, really support him continuing in that role because of his record of engagement.
Thank you. Do you happen to know why this one is appointed in a meeting and all the others are not?
I do. It's part of the WLSCF charter that they have to have this one nominated and this organizational meeting, and the rest of the appointments are done later in the year. And so, or in the next month, as you know, you'll work through that process in the next month. But this particular one is a requirement to appoint tonight.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of appointing Mr. Schott back to the WLSCF, please indicate by raising your hand. That motion passes 7-0. All right, now I get to use, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Ms. Wade.
in the past, there's been a second person who's been appointed to serve in that. I also have served on that. I know you have served on that as a second. And so perhaps you might want to consider, as you're doing committee appointments, if you want to appoint a secondary member to the WLCF that is not this commitment required, but would be supportive and, as has been suggested, a second set of eyes.
Thank you. That's a good idea. Okay. I get to use the gavel for the first time to adjourn the organizational meeting and call to order our regular meeting. Oh, shoot, we have to call a motion to adjourn.
I always
don't get
forgot
to
it, too.
bang on the gavel. All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Mr. Wong, thank you. And a second? Second by Mr. Marley. Okay, all those in favor of adjourning this meeting and starting the next one, please raise your hand. Great. Now I get to do it. All right. So I call to order the regular meeting of the West Lafayette Community School Corporation Board of Trustees. We have 2 speakers this evening, and no guests to be recognized, but Dr. Greiner, did you have anything you wanted to?
I do have one thing I would like to point out. I'd like to congratulate Mr. Levy, as he is the recipient of the Golden Apple Award. Mr. Levy teaches social studies at our high school. We're proud of Mr. Levy for receiving this award. We appreciate the contribution to the district and to our community that he brings. We also appreciate his passion, and we're proud of him for this award. Mr. Levy will be recognized at the Golden Apple ceremony on February 27th from 5:30 to 7 at the Greater Lafayette Career Academy.
Okay, I will note that so I don't show up at the wrong place. Thank you very much. The first person who signed up to speak this evening is Aaron Moonwalker. And please come up. And Mr. Schott, as the new secretary, would you keep the time, please? I'd like to remind everyone that comments from the audience are limited to 3 minutes. And Mr. Schott will wave when you get close. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
My name is Erin Moonwalker. I live at 11. Is this on?
I don't know.
Do you want-
Yes, it's on. It didn't sound like it.
I live at 1147 Hillcrest Road. I'm following up on the comment I gave in October in which I expressed concern about a bullying incident not being reported to the IDOE. I will also follow up after this meeting via email. Right before winter break, I received a voicemail from the high school principal who stated, quote, "We did look into that because we were sure it had been reported, and it turns out it was accurately reported," end quote. He used the word "we," so I'm assuming more than one staff member looked into this with him. He told me he had read my related post on social media, and their conclusion was that I misread the IDOE's bullying report. He instructed me to read it again, and I was assured that, and I would be assured that I would find that an April 25th incident of verbal bullying had been reported to the IDOE. I'm sure all of you are as shocked as I am that he would say that, given that I told you yourselves in the fall of 2022 that my child had been physically assaulted on film after being threatened and kicked. That would place both the incident and my notice to you well before April 25th of 2023. And he was in the audience when I gave the most recent comment referencing that I had discussed this incident of bullying in the fall of 2022, which again is before April 25th of 2023. The April 25th incident he is discussing in his voicemail is yet another bullying incident perpetrated by yet another student against my child.
Mrs. Moonwalker, I'm sorry to interrupt, but please.
I'm not mentioning any students by name, and you have students up here all the time mentioning them by name, so that would be
Well, recognitions
not
are different than talking about disciplinary.
No, it's not. Constitutionally, it is not, and I do not appreciate this.
Okay.
And I would like to reclaim my time.
I've stopped.
Thank you. A student my child told me bullied other children so frequently that she feared this student. Perhaps the April 25th verbal bullying was in fact accurately reported to the IDOE, as he stated, but that would mean that my child was the only child in the entire school to have experienced verbal bullying, which I'm sure, like me, you realize is statistically unlikely, in other words, unbelievable. Hundreds of students, grades 7 through 12, attending school 180 days per year, and only one child was verbally bullied. It just happened to be mine. And we are to believe there were 0 incidents of physical bullying or cyberbullying in the entire school. So I'm here to tell you once again, I don't think bullying is being adequately reported. The repeated physical bullying my child reported and the filmed assault I witnessed were not reported to the state. And I feel it's insulting to go through what we went through, take the time to come before you, receive no response or communication from you, and then get told that I misread something and need to go back and reread my own social media post. Also, on another note, I heard that years of experience was used to guide the nomination of the election of board members, board officers, but it really would have been nice of you to take into account the years of experience others have had not being from this country and not being white. It looks like your DEI training has taught you nothing.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Cusick, would you like to share?
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
I thought I would come back and you guys should change your nameplates.
Oh, thank
I won't
you.
call you. I just wanted to say thank you for your efforts last year in bringing the school board and the school system along. And Amy, I'm glad that you recognized and heard my comments a couple months ago regarding a more unanimous board. I think that's really important. And I wanted to ask if anybody's seen Boys in the Boat movie. Yeah, you should go see it. It's a wonderful movie. The book is even better, and it came out several years ago. And I would encourage you all to read it. It's all about a group of young men, 9 of them from the University of Washington, that took on the challenge to compete in the 1936 Olympics. They did, and they got the gold medal. So that ruins the movie, sorry. But it's a fine example of 9 men working together as one, not 9 individuals. So I would just come back and say, please look at how this board is seen by the community and come about with more unanimous votes, because that is voting as one, not several. Thanks.
Thank you.
I can provide a copy of the book if you'd like it.
Thanks. Love a good book recommendation. Okay, let's see. Now we're on item 3, which is routine business. Number 1, approve the agenda for the January 8th regular meeting of the Board of School Trustees. I need a motion, please. Moved by Mr. Schott, seconded by Mr. Marley. Is there anything to say about the agenda tonight? Great. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please indicate by raising your hands. That motion carries 7-0. The next one is the approval of the minutes for the December 11th executive session of the Board of School Trustees. I need a motion. Moved by Ms. Witt. Oops, I can't spell. Seconded by Mr. Marley. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes for the executive session on December 11th, please raise your hand. That moves 7-0. Next is the approval of the minutes for the December 11th regular meeting of the Board of School Trustees. I need a motion. Moved by Ms. Witt. Second by Mr. Schott. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Hi.
I appreciate in looking at these minutes, there's been more details added about the recommendations by the administration. Unfortunately, the phrase discussion ensued, that the public access counselor said is not sufficient enough to share what's happening with the school board, was removed and nothing was replaced it. So currently the minutes are inaccurate because it does not share that there was any discussion among school board members. And so I'm not sure who made that decision to start cutting out discussion ensued, but we need information to the community about why school board members are voting the way they're voting and sharing more information about what school board members are discussing, not just administration.
All right. Ms. Witt?
As I recall, the minutes do reiterate that the meeting has been recorded. Is that a correct recall?
I believe so.
So the minutes would direct anyone who is interested in the detail of the meeting to go to the video or audio recording of the minutes if they wanted to hear for themselves every word spoken.
Also, there's a transcript, I believe.
Yes.
Yes.
The raw transcript.
Yep.
Yes.
Anyone else? Mr. Wong?
Yeah, regarding the live stream and record, that's the voice record. That's not really the official document. I think that can be removed after 18 months or something like that. And the meeting minutes kind of official document we should keep. And we should, which is also the open door law required, any governing bodies should be document the general substance of any deliberations or discussions on the meeting. So I think, I mean, that discussion is sure to be removed from our meeting minutes. I think that's good move. And thank you for Amy and Roberta for doing this. So I think remove that, we can at least avoid possible unnecessary scrutinies from PAC. So that's good moves. But I think we can make that better with more informations. And I think our city council's meeting minutes is a very good example. They have a document high level summary of discussions, deliberations, and at the end of deliberations, they will say there's no more discussion, and then Mr. or Miss whoever present call for voting. And if there are no discussion, they will say there's no comments for this section, something like that. So I think that's a good example. Maybe we can do that. I mean, if other local governing body can do that, and I think we can do that. And I think it's a good opportunity for us to demonstrate we are accountable as a school board, accountability to the open door law, also accountable to what we did, what we said on the meeting. So I think there should be more information on that. Thank you.
Thank you. You made me curious, and I pulled up our YouTube page, and our videos are on there back to June 1st of 2020, and I believe that's when we started live streaming because of COVID. So they have not been removed after 18
Yeah,
months.
I understand that. But that's there's some I think there's some laws say you can keep that up to 60 months. I cannot remember, 18 months, and then after that you can remove that. So basically, we don't have obligation to keep those movies online. So, but the meeting minutes is kind of a permanent document. And my understanding is we school board talk through the meeting minutes. So that's the official document we should keep and also make that more reliable and informative. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thanks. Ms. Witt?
Yes, as the prior board chair to the current board chair, I want to communicate with you that no members of the board during my time as board chair shared any corrections or additions or concerns with the minutes in any way prior to this in the meeting.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that information. Has there been a motion to, no, if you would like to amend the minutes, we would need a motion to either amend or table the minutes so that we could proceed with that. Is that
I'm happy to make a motion to table the minutes so that more information could be added.
okay? Ms. Mumford motions to table. Is there a second? Mr. Wong seconds. All those in favor of tabling the approval of the minute, oh, I'm sorry, discussion. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, just I
Yep.
have one more thing regarding the public comments. I think again, the December meeting minutes is pretty good. We have public comments, we have person's name, and we also have titles. So that's great. I appreciate Amy and Roberta for this kind of improvement. I think that's very good. But I think we can make that better. Basically, what I'm thinking is we can add maybe 1 or 2 sentences of the key point of each public comments. I mean, the things is we are kind of public service. We elect by the community members and we paid by the public fund. So once a month, somebody, I mean, the people we serve, and they come to the meeting, they want to share something, their feedback, their concerns, their comments, they want to share with us. I think we should listen and at least document their comments on the meeting minutes. So that I think that's perfect opportunity for us to demonstrate that as a school board, collectively, also individually, we are willing to listen to our communities, and also their comment, their suggestions are welcome. So that's one reason I think we should more information, the public comments on the meeting minutes. And I also think, I mean, whenever people, they want to share something, that must be something very important for them. I mean, they have prepared the message, they stand up from that table, the chair, and walk over here, sit over here, and they need a huge courage. So I think whatever they say must be important for them, and at least we should document that. And I also believe the collective intelligence. So our local peoples have a lot of good ideas, comments. If they share with us, I think again we need to document that. That's my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything to say about tabling the minutes? Dr. Yin.
So, yeah, I agree. So, for example, the community comments and communication from the audience, we can just have a very brief summary, for example, in this particular case, and the speaker expressed concerns about the split votes and expressed concerns about the rushed decisions for the legal service. And so we can just use the 2 sentences to summarize the concern of today the speaker talked about the inaccurate concern about inaccurate report of bullying incidents, and just something like that. I think it will be helpful. And also, probably can associate it with our new website, and eventually, we will have a new website. All those files will be put together. I think it would be helpful to connect the meeting minutes with the corresponding supporting document. For example, in the later part, we have a presentation of the priority.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Dr. Yin, we're talking about tabling right now.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about that so that we can keep the motion straight. Otherwise, it gets really confusing for Roberta and now Mr. Shaw.
Okay, so in summary, I support to have more information about the votes, especially when there's a split votes, people, why they vote one way or the other. It should be a rationale for it. And another is for the public comments. It would be helpful to have a more, like a brief summary rather than just one word. So that's that's why I would like to vote to table it.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. All right, all those in favor of tabling the approval of the minutes pending more information, please indicate by raising your hands. That would be Dr. Yin, Mr. Wong, and Mrs. Mumford. All those not in favor of tabling, all those opposed to tabling, please indicate by raising your hands. That would be Mr. Schott, Mr. Marley, Ms. Witt, and myself. So we will not be tabling the approval of the minutes. We'll return to the motion to approve the minutes. Is there any further discussion about that? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes for December 11th as submitted, please indicate by raising your hand. That would be Mr. Schott, Mr. Marley, Ms. Witt, and myself. And all those opposed to approving the minutes, please indicate with a raised hand. That would be Dr. Yin, Mr. Wong, and Ms. Mumford. Moving on to the approval of the minutes of the December 19th executive session. I need a motion, please. Moved by Mr. Marley, seconded by Ms. Witt. I'm sorry. This gets real confusing up here. Okay. Is there any discussion about approving the executive session minutes? Hearing none, let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please raise your hand. 7-0. Okay, unfinished business. I have it here. Marley Witt. Yep. Okay. Unfinished business is blank, so we'll move on to new business and the personnel report. Dr. Greiner.
All right, before I ask the board to approve the personnel report, I want to point a couple of things out. I first want to recognize Mrs. Denise Deutsch, as she has submitted her letter of retirement, as you're aware, but I wanted to publicly congratulate her on her retirement. She served our district for 39 and a half years in the classroom, and we appreciate her years of service and the impact that she's had on students and our community. At this time, I'd also like to thank Mrs. Delaney and several members of her school team who over holiday break, we're interviewing to ensure that we have a solid candidate for that position. Their dedication is appreciated. And I'd like to thank Mrs. Kriebel for her help with the transition as well. I also want to point out that you saw in the personnel report a notice that for days of leave for bus drivers, you received an email. Hopefully you had a chance to see that here at the last minute. Apologize for the last minute notice here, but we've removed the request for unpaid days for drivers. As you may recall, the board approves unpaid days for staff members under contract, because when a contract changes, then the board approves that contract. So that's required for a board approval. If it's just unpaid days, there's no change to any contract. That goes directly to the supervisor. It's not necessary that it comes to you guys. And so it just keeps things consistent and simplified. Yes. And so I wanted you to understand why that happened. I thought it'd make more sense to explain it here. And with those comments, it's my recommendation to the board that you accept the personnel report as presented.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone have any questions about the personnel report? Oh, sorry. Do we need a motion first to approve the personnel report, and then we'll get you? So moved by Mr. Wong. Is there a second? Ms. Mumford, seconds. Okay, now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, yes, just a quick question. So those, as you said, bus drivers, their unpaid leave is not document, and we don't have the contract. It's basically more than the contract defined, right? So that's why we have to go through this process. Is that right?
Correct. So if someone signs a contract, then their contract has so many days. So if person under contract requests unpaid days, then their contract actually changes the number of days they work and the pay for that contract for the days. That doesn't happen with a bus driver because they don't sign a contract. They're just paid at a daily rate.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So this won't
Hourly rate, I'm
interrupt
sorry.
our student transportations, right? I saw several bus drivers kind of unpaid leave, but it won't hurt our.
Correct. What it means is they have 5 days of leave, whether it's sick or a personal day. If they exhaust those 5 days, they may request another day if they've had an illness or a funeral. And so if that happens, what'll happen is that driver will request to the director of transportation to have an unpaid day, and then the director of transportation approves that at his level.
They are pretty happy, right? I see there's nothing wrong. They just have some.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
No,
good.
there's nothing wrong.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. That's good. I see several. I mean, several. That's good. That's good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay. All those in favor of approving the personnel report, please indicate with a raised hand. That's 7-0. Okay. Next item is the Early Literacy Achievement Grant. Mrs. Roth, would you like to explain?
Yes, so you are asked today, in accordance with Policy 6110, to approve the funds that we have received from the Indiana Department of Education. These were not competitive funds. They were automatically awarded to us, but our policy requires that the board accept them. This grant is specifically for literacy achievement, and the grant funds were awarded in the amount of $11,574.58. After working with Mrs. Delaney to determine who has responsibilities related to teaching reading standards, literacy standards, it was determined that the stipend amount will be $231 for 44 teachers, which are 2 half-time and 42 full-time teachers. The grant rules allow us to do this proportionately as well. The grant also allows us to pay for costs such as FICA and teachers' retirement through that. That way we're not incurring additional expenses. The grant is very focused on raising literacy rates in the state of Indiana. You may or may not have heard that that will probably be a focus of this legislative session. And it's also focused on recognizing the work that our teachers at the early learning stages do. So you are asked today to accept those funds so that we can move forward with paying out those stipends. Pending acceptance, pending approval of the board in this matter, proportionate stipends are paid for those less than full-time. The full stipend would be paid as well, and that would hopefully be paid on the January 19th payroll. So we ask for your approval.
Mr. Wong and Mr. Marley. Move in second. Any discussion? Ms. Bumper?
Quick question, is this the first time we've ever gotten this grant, and who applied for it? I mean, this is exciting.
It's not a competitive grant.
Okay.
So basically, every school in the state of Indiana
Was given it.
Yes, and it was awarded based upon a variety of factors, literacy achievement, a variety of factors. And it is the first time. In the past, this was something that came with the last legislative session, again, focusing, I believe it was $10 million on literacy, like boosting literacy achievement. And then Lilly also has done a private grant to focus on literacy achievement. Previously, we received a grant called the Early Intervention Grant that was competitive, and it was not for stipends. It was for purchasing curricular materials or things like that that could help with understanding literacy rates. But the legislature decided in the last session that focusing on recognizing the work of our K-3 teachers in promoting literacy at that very basic fundamental level is essential.
Awesome.
Could the funds be used for anything other than stipends?
No.
Thank you.
All right, all those no, we have a motion. All those in favor of approving the grant, please raise your hand. 7-0, and that passes, and I'm gonna get this. All right, moving on to staff recognition. Back to you, Mrs. Roll.
So this is a program that was actually put in place last year, and we wanted to kind of give everybody a kind of a beginning of the year 2024 look at this, because this is an internal recognition program, and we've kind of branched into an external recognition program for the community with our teachers, but this is kind of where we started this. So this program is called Appreciation, Recognition, and Thanks, and if you look at that, it becomes the acronym ART. I guess it's the art of being gracious, or the art of being thankful, or whatever however you want to look at it. But this is an employee-to-employee recognition program. So you can see this was started in November 2022 with the goals of promoting a positive work environment. That's part of retention and recruitment, and sustaining employees that want to, hopefully you love where you work. Hopefully you love the students you work with, but you also love the people you work with. And then it's also open to all employees. So this is not just for one building or one department. This is across buildings, across departments, and it occurs monthly. So a person from the elementary could nominate someone in transportation. Someone in food service could nominate someone in the front office at the high school if they wanted to. Really is open to everyone. If you'll move on to that next slide. We get the message. It's done through a form where employees are able to write the name of the person they'd like the message delivered to. They're able to include their name anonymously if they so choose. And they can choose to write a little message showing why they appreciate, what it is that they're thankful for, or what they'd like to recognize. And we get those at the end through each month, and we draw 5 names very randomly, literally just a numbered pick to get the names. And we have delivered 330 of these messages to date to our staff, and it's kind of fun. And it is fun. It's not kind of fun, it is fun, we'll put it that way. And we started last year with a program that is following along the same lines, and is the opportunity for families to appreciate, and families and those in our community to appreciate our students, our staff and our teachers. And we're gonna push that a little bit more this year to make it a little bit more relevant and prevalent. So that last slide, if you look, it just shows some of the deliveries. These get delivered to each building. And we can't go into all classrooms because that would probably disrupt the learning environment, but sometimes we get the chance to go into some classrooms to deliver these. And the students, if they are in the building or if they are in the room, are usually pretty happy that their teacher is being recognized, and they're very thankful. And so it kind of is the, I guess, the bonus, the value added portion of the program. But This is something that we've just started and have continued, and hopefully as more people realize, this is something that you want to do. It's completely optional. You don't have to do it, but if you want to do it, any of our employees are welcome to do this, and they're welcome to recognize any other employee. So we wanted to share that with you, and any questions, if you have them, we'd be happy to entertain them.
Any questions? Dr. Yin?
Yeah, I'm always for supporting and appreciating staff members, but I have a question here. So I noticed that the every month 5 names will be randomly chosen. I wonder, why do we do it like randomly? Why don't we ask people to name like the teacher staff members, so to make them more special, because it's more like a lottery?
Let me clarify. We actually deliver them all. The 5 randomly chosen ones get a $5 gift card from Starbucks. Everyone is recognized. All of the certificates are delivered. This is just a little cherry on top of the cake, just a random. And then those gift cards are donated.
Oh, that's great.
So everybody recognized every
Yep.
month.
Yep.
5 people got gift cards.
So everybody that received a note of appreciation from another individual. So if Mrs. Delaney recognizes me, I may not get drawn for a prize, but I'm going to receive her certificate. In fact, I've got one hanging on my office right now that I got from somebody this last time. And it says, I appreciate Dr. Greiner. It tells why I'm appreciated. That's much more important to me than the coffee. And so, gift certificate. So I've got that hanging to remind me that somebody appreciates me in my office, where I can see it when I walk in
Yeah.
each morning. So every person each month that receives recognition from somebody gets that certificate with that appreciation and why they're appreciated.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that way all messages that are sent are delivered.
Okay, so that's like a mechanism is from employee to employee, like what you started with earlier. But I wonder, is there any way the family and parents and students can participate in this?
We started
appreciation?
something last year that is, it's a different program, and we've reinstituted that. It's not really caught on yet, but we're hoping by talking a little bit more about this that it'll continue to catch on, and we'll continue to publicize it. But yes, there are opportunities for families and community members to recognize staff members as well, for the same reasons.
Yeah, great. Because the only one I know of is the Golden Apple, and but we have so many great teachers. I hope we give teachers more opportunities to be recognized besides the only one. And also, I kind of mentioned it a couple of times in the past several years. I think it will be also helpful to have some like an anniversary recognition.
The years of service.
Yeah, to recognize people who kind of serve the district for a long time. As far as I know, Purdue and the UIC are both doing this for every 5-year, 10-year, there will be a gift, and 15, 20, those things, and people will get a gift. And sometimes we had meetings where people can tell the stories about that person and why they appreciate them, make it very special. Yeah, something like that.
Ms. Witt?
Thank you.
First of all, I just want to say thank you. This has been something on the laundry list of things we'd like to do, something along this lines for a long time. And so I appreciate you running that program and
I
appreciating
no longer
teachers.
run it. Okay. We got it started, and it's been handed off to be sustained.
All right. And I also want to echo what Dr. Yunus said. I've said this already once tonight on a different matter, but I will echo it again. It is important to recognize and appreciate people's experience and their tenure with the corporation and their role and their knowledge gained over time. So I think that would be lovely if we found a way to prioritize recognizing those individuals as well.
And that is, we tried to get it last year, but it actually is in the works for this year. Now that we've moved one thing, we can start and move forward. So yes, we were looking at work year anniversaries as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Are board members eligible?
Our board what?
Board members eligible. I like coffee.
Are you, if you're an employee of the district, so in this case, no. But this is the month to recognize board members.
It
I
is.
believe.
That's true.
Okay. It's someone tell me they're employees of the district and we can recognize them. Not a big deal.
Okay.
Perhaps the money you're no longer paying us for some meetings could be used for gifts for teachers. So if you got what that is.
If you wanted to donate it, you absolutely could. The gift cards that we get are through donations.
Nice.
There's a fine line of what I can buy and what I can't buy. I can't buy anything that would be considered a personal item. If it's something that can be used for work, I can buy that. Sometimes those aren't very exciting though.
All right, Dr. Griner, how about this high school art donation? What's that about?
Okay, so the high school art donation, we received a $1,500 donation, and you may recall that legislation and policy aligned to legislation, which is policy 7230, require board approval for donations. So we just have a donation of $1,500 here for the high school art department. And I recommend the board approve or vote to approve the donation of $1,500.
Okay, I need a motion, please. Moved by Ms. Witt. Second by Mr. Wong. Any discussion? Ms. Witt?
I'd just like to point out that the part of the reason that we receive this donation is because our art teachers are engaged in around the Fountain Art Fair, and they do that on their own time to both promote arts and careers and professional creative endeavors, as well as to support the school corporation. So the art teachers, particularly at the junior senior, deserve some praise for this one.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else? Mr. Wong?
Is there any additional condition or some restrictions attached with this donation?
Not in the donation.
Whatever you want to use for the art program.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. We have a motion and a second, so if that's, oh,
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate the donation. I just wonder, so what do we have a systematic way to appreciate the donors? Because, every year we have generous donors, so, and we have the Red Devil pen, something like that, right? The newsletter.
yes. we
Yeah,
have
we
a newsletter.
wonder, yeah, with their permission, of course, and then if those donors and any other donors are willing to be shared, then I think it would be nice to recognize them and also kind of promote more donations.
Okay. Let's vote on this donation. All those in favor of receiving this, please indicate with a show of hands. That's 7-0. All right. The retroactive transfer resolution, Mrs. Kronk.
Okay. As Mr. Reuter mentioned during the 2023 budget presentation, that's been a little while ago now, sorry, the debt service fund maximum rate was set at 0.5375 in the past, and the remaining balance in the 17 lease construction fund was set aside to cover debt payments in the fund when needed, as it cannot run in the negative at the end of a 6-month period. After paying our debt service payments for 2023, receiving our final property tax settlement the last week of December, and then completing the protected taxes waiver adjustments, it was necessary to transfer money from the 17 lease construction fund to the debt service fund so that it would not run into the negative in the amount of $57,794.93. I prepared a transfer resolution for you to approve this transfer retroactively, as it does have to be dated before the end of the year in order to count, to bring the fund out of the negative for calendar year 2023. Please approve that resolution as submitted.
Okay, I need a motion, please. So moved by Mr. Wong. Second by Mr. Schott. Any discussion? Mr. Wong?
Quick question. So basically the this debit service, we have waivers for the protection, right? So basically the debit service shares the circuit break.
Yeah,
risk
so-
over.
yeah.
So after that. And
After the waiver that we did adjustments because of the waiver that brought us down into the negative, therefore
So
that
that's-
money was
that's
needed
why-
to cover that negative.
Actually, our debit service revenue is enough to cover the debit payment.
The revenue does cover the debt payments, yes, but because of that transfer for protected taxes so that we could
The waiver
get, keep more money in the operations fund so that we wouldn't lose all 1.3 million in the operations fund. We did that transfer, we got that waiver, and then that's why the debt service rate or the debt service amount went down.
Okay, that's my understanding. So it seems.
It's a very complicated process, so
Yeah, but-
all those
yeah,
together.
okay.
And I do
another-
apologize that I could not bring it to the December board meeting because we did not get all that information until, like I said, December 28th, 29th. And I did not know how much it was going to be until we had all of those things, so.
And then also regarding this 20 2017 leasing construction fund. So do you have a little bit more background or information about this fund? My understanding maybe that's leftover for the project.
Yes, it is left over from the construction project, and at some point, and I'm sorry, I can't tell you the date, the board did determine that whatever was left over would be used to cover debt service, if it were, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, all those in favor of the retroactive transfer, please indicate with a raised hand. All right, that's 6 or 7, I'm still here, 7-0. Okay, and back to you for the check runs.
Okay, this is something that's done every January, that we have been doing every January, and from time to time, it's necessary to pay claims outside of regularly scheduled board meetings in order to maintain operations and good relationships with vendors, as well as to not incur late fees or penalties. The resolution for additional check runs will allow the business office to pay these expenses and to bring them to the next regularly scheduled board meeting for approval. They show up as paid between board on your claims docket. Please approve that resolution as submitted.
Okay, I need a motion, please. Moved by Mrs. Witt. Second by Mr. Marley. Any discussion? Ms. Witt?
I appreciate you adding the between board notation onto the claims docket. It does make it easier to identify that. So thank you for that.
We have a good system that allows us to do that, so.
Anyone else? Okay, all those in favor of the resolution, please indicate with raised hand. That's 7 also. The next item is the accounts payable and finance update.
Claims for the period of December 7th to January 8th total $6,128,180.98, including regular corporation expenses and the Wabash Valley Education Center expenses. Of this amount, $1,932,681 were paid towards wages, salaries, and benefits. And moving on to our preliminary fund report for the month ending December 31st, the education fund has a balance of $5,024,947.90, and total funds on hand for the corporation are $21,920,196.92. Please note that the report is preliminary, as we have not yet closed the month or completed all year-end processes at this time, and there are some payroll benefits that are still being posted, along with the year-end things that we're doing. I would also like to remind everyone that several funds, typically state and federal funds, may run into the negative during the month as they are reimbursable. We must expend money in those funds before we can claim reimbursement. The office has worked diligently the past 2 weeks and between the holidays to prepare for the payroll that was on January 5th. I also like to share that this is actually the first year in a long time that we've not had to create new payroll accounts due to changes by the DOE or the State Board of Accounts. Those are never fun to do right after New Year's. In the next few weeks, we will be working to get employee W-2s processed, sent to the schools, and uploaded into the employee portals, as well as running vendor 1099s, completing the Form 9 semi-annual financial report for the district, and completing the ACA healthcare. I have an accent tonight. ACA healthcare forms for employees. At the end of December, we did receive the curricular materials reimbursement from the state. If you remember, the textbook fees went away as of this year, and the state moved to reimbursing districts up to a certain amount per student each school year for textbook expenses. We turned in approximately $412,000 in expenditures for the 23-24 school year, and we were reimbursed about $349,495 of that. So this money was posted into the 900 curricular materials fund. It used to be the textbook rental fund. It's now the curricular materials fund. And we also have Medicare and Indiana Public Retirement System information meetings planned for the next couple of months for any employees that are interested in learning more information. And we also plan on inviting the other school corporations in the county to attend those meetings too if they wish. So please approve the accounts payable finance update as submitted.
I know retirement is a particular interest of yours. I'm sure people
More
are really
information you can
grateful.
get, the better.
Yep. It's not easy to plan. All right, I need a motion, please. Mr. Wong, sorry. Mr. Marley, was that you? Yeah. Okay, cool. All those, is there discussion about accounts payable? Oh, Ms.
I
Witt.
want to apologize. I sent my questions in advance, but I forgot to add this one, so I'm sorry. On the financial report funds, I noticed that the West Lafayette City CARES grant is still sitting there. Is there a timeline for resolution on that?
I believe that actually what was done with that grant was not actually done. And so that fund has now been zeroed out, and any expenses have been moved back into the regular funds as the purpose of that grant was not fulfilled completely, I believe.
Okay, so, thank you. Yeah. I just was curious. That one had been there for a bit, and I was curious. Thank you. Sorry for the late notice.
Oh, you're fine.
Dr. Yin?
Just glad I could answer it.
Just now you reported the textbook cost and the reimbursement, and I didn't exactly caught the number. So what's the gap? How much
So
do
we
have to
turned in
pay?
412,000 in expenditures. And they reimbursed us 349,495.
Okay, so then we pay the gap.
So our textbook fund, due to how things used to be, did still have some money in it, and so it was able to cover that shortfall. We have been told that in the future, if we do not have money in our curricular materials fund to cover that shortfall, then we would have to pay expenses from the education fund or a different fund to cover those expenses.
Okay, so basically this is sustainable. So we can continue to make the materials free for students, and we have a way to cover it. So with the
I'm
state,
sorry, I didn't hear you.
I mean, so this is sustainable. So we have a way to cover it with the state fund and our own fund.
Yes,
We are able to
yes.
continue
And-
to do this.
And if you remember, we did have a discussion about this earlier, that we were expecting that we weren't going to get reimbursed for everything that we spent. We did not have it as bad as other school corporations, I will tell you, from what I heard. We actually had a pretty low year for textbook expenses, though. So if this were a year where we had more adoption of, say, like math or English, we would have lost a lot more money. So, yes.
Dr. Yin, we're required to not charge, so.
Yes.
Yeah, so we have to make up the difference
Yeah.
in other funds if that occurs. So for that reason, the Superintendent's Association, the School Board Association, and IASPO, the Indiana Association of School Business Organization, are working very closely with each other and then communicating back and forth with legislators, and we're watching this very closely. So our organizations will certainly be communicating to see is that the right amount, but the legislation requires that we not charge.
And I believe all of our associations all have it as part of their legislative resolutions this year. So they're all lobbying right now, and the session did start today. So I know all of our directors are busy at work. So,
Ms. Witt?
Dr. Reiner, would you anticipate around the state, I understand that we have referendum funds and manage that closely, but would you, is it likely that this lack of funding for textbooks and curricular materials would mean a poor quality or availability of resources for school corporations that cannot supplement the amount?
So what it'll mean is those dollars are coming, it could lead to poorer quality of something. So if they're taking money, for example, out of bargainable dollars, right? And we want the best teachers, so we want to pay them well. What it'll mean is the money comes from somewhere. And so it's important that we're communicating with our organizations and or directly with legislators to help them understand where that gap is, what it looks like, and what it means.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I do know a lot of school corporations. They're speaking with their local legislators, giving them the data so that they have that data as they go into the legislative session. So,
Would you please let the board know if there is an opportunity for members to contact legislators and support that mission as well? It'd be something I would be interested in.
Okay, we can do that.
Okay, anybody else? Let's vote on the accounts payable. All those in favor of approving it as presented, please raise your hand. That's 7. Okay. Now is the safe and accessible neighborhood discussion. You might remember that last month we voted to resolve to do, would you like to? Yes, please.
This is one that Dr. Greiner and I worked through with legal counsel prior to the end of the year and in this past week in trying to come up with a resolution, as we discussed at our meeting last month, to align with the city's intention going forward and offer our support and our statement to the community regarding the importance of having safe and accessible neighborhoods that are good places for children to live. And so this is the resolution that was drafted by legal counsel that Dr. Greiner and I both followed through and reviewed and felt comfortable bringing forward to the board.
Thanks.
Can I add to that too?
Yes, you should.
Okay. And so the other part we did was we know that we're good partners with the mayor. And so we worked very closely with Mayor Easter to make sure that it was something she was comfortable with. So she guided us in terminology that we could use, because ultimately she was very pleased that the board would want to support the city's efforts in doing this too. So she gave us terminology that she felt very comfortable with us using. So the specific terminology is more in our collaborative work support with the mayor to put a message that we all felt we could, or that you all could jointly provide in collaboration with the mayor.
So that is available in box and also in the board documents online if anyone's curious. I need a motion to approve moved by Ms. Witt, second by Mr. Schott. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of resolving to support maintaining safe, accessible, multi-generational, and walkable neighborhoods within the city of West Lafayette, please raise your hand. Okay, that's 7. Information to the board. I don't have any. How about you? Do you have information? You don't have any information. Okay, then we'll move forward to, do you have any as outgoing president? I bet you do.
You have information to the board as terms of committee assignments for what your process will be.
Oh, I do have, thank you. Golly. It's been a long day, y'all. So the board committees, aside from the West Lafayette Foundation, will be assigned over the coming month. And as has been done in the past, I plan to take into account people's interests and where they've been and what they've been doing for the continuity of those organizations. And I really enjoy legislation, so I'll probably stick with that. So we'll be working on that, and we'll have announcements next month. And if anyone has any feedback or requests in terms of committee assignments, please email me or call me and share that. Is that everything I have?
You want the Parks Board deadline because for the next meeting, it's a sworn in one.
Right.
And redevelopment, those both have a swear in.
Okay, so they need to be done now?
No, they just need to communicate with you promptly.
Right. Okay, so the Parks Board and the Redevelopment Board have swearing in that happens annually prior to our next meeting?
Yes.
So if you intend to continue with those, let me know. And we'll get you assigned to that so that you can be sworn in at their next meeting.
Sorry.
All right. Dr. Yin, let's start with you. Your report from your committees.
First of all, because I didn't get time to talk about, to make an incumbents for the transition housing, I appreciate that now it's explicit. So the transition housing was explicit in the statement, we just approved just now. Okay. So the committee, another comments, the general comments is, I think for the assignment, it would be helpful to list all the existing ones and so have a brief description about what it is. And especially for the new members who don't necessarily know, exactly what each of them for, and before people sign up for those committee. And so then for the park update, in the park this year we'll have new programs, and which include some online ones. They also try to involve more of the homeschooled community with some of the programs. And another thing is there will be a point, all the other park board members actually appointed by the mayor, except for the school, the one that we have one, we will have one board member serve on that park. So if anybody is interested, you are welcome to take this position as well. And I'm happy to serve on it, but if anybody else is interested in serving on it, it would be great to Yeah, and another thing is for the coming year, and the board meeting will be from 4 o'clock on every third Monday. So this month it will be January the 22nd. And typically the meeting lasts for an hour. So that's for the park. And then for the curriculum, when Mrs. Ross shared with me the new website, and kind of I got an opportunity to have a preview of the website, and it's very nice. And thank you for Mr. Ross and Mr. Hamilton for putting that together. And yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wong?
Well, for me, I don't have too much update. It's just I joined there's seminars regarding the school finance with Dr. Brenner and Ms. Kronk. That's back to December. So that's all. Thank you.
Yep. Mr. Shaw?
From Foundation, WLCSC is providing support for the upcoming Career and Trades Fair on January 18. The Foundation appreciates the opportunity to work with the Counseling Office on this great event. The deadline for graduating seniors to apply for scholarships is February 1st. WLASCF is grateful to the many donors who provide scholarship funds to support our students. Update on a previous note, Nobel Prize recipient Munji Bawendi, class of 1978, will be returning to West Lafayette to spend the day with students and staff on April 25. Foundation and the West Lafayette Alumni Association are excited to host Dr. Bawendi, obviously. And that evening, Dr. Bawendi will be the guest of Purdue President Mung Chiang as part of the presidential lecture series. So great partnership with Purdue on that. And the next community council meeting is January 22nd at noon.
Okay, thanks. What a great opportunity for our students. Ms. Mufford?
Safety Committee, Mr. Ulrich did a great job before this meeting, having an executive session and sharing the updates that they have made to the safety plan. So that was much appreciated. And then just one question, a follow-up from the community's members' comments last month. Could we get a quote from ISBA and CCHA about a training? So back in May, this came up. And had said that we would get quotes to have someone come in and provide some professional trainings, but I've heard no follow-up since then. So I was wondering if we could reach out, those were two that had been brought up at that meeting, to get quotes and bring someone in to help our school board be more professional and do better at working together.
I appreciate you bringing that up. I have a couple of ideas. I've been thinking about this. I nominated myself, so obviously I've been thinking about it. And I have some ideas that I'm going to be emailing everybody about in the coming week or two. I didn't want to jump the gun and assume that, but yeah, I think that's something we all recognize the need for. So I don't know that necessarily quotes will be gotten at this stage, but I'd like to share my ideas about that by email. So look for that this week.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Witt?
WLEA board teacher discussion met December the 21st. There was an update from WLEA members about class sizes. And as everyone's aware, they'd been watching the fifth grade cohort, and the count on that cohort has actually decreased because of some changeover in international students. So they'll continue to track that. I know Dr. Reiner is being very watchful of that, but there was positive feedback. Also just some updates on some open positions and issues that have been going on that are administrative in nature. And then they did inquire about the school board appointments, who from the board would likely to be assigned to that. And I will just share that I'm interested in continuing in that role if it is available.
Great, thank you. The legislature just started today, so they haven't done much yet. Mr. Marley?
Okay, regrettably, I missed the last RDC meeting. I was given notice 2 days before that I had to make a presentation to my bank on the operating results here in Lafayette. So I was glad to do that. Sorry I missed the RDC meeting. I will tell you that resolution RC 2023-6 was approved. We have had several readings of these budget allocations for these TIF districts. There are 5 TIF districts in all. I'll give you a summary. Total services and other charges amounted to $6,013,000. Total capital outlay was $14,554,328. Total debt service, $12,595,100. The grand total of these TIF districts, $33,162,428. So there's that much money coming in from that source. And again, I've described this before, but where you see things like the wellness center or perhaps a new fire station, one of the things that we have that we're talking about is a new public safety building. So there's that. Then there's capital equipment that we pay for. All the patrol cars that you see generally paid for by the RDC, as are fire engines and bobcats and mowers and you name it. So very useful, and the dollars are well invested in our community, and I'll just keep you up to date on it. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Okay. I forgot. Sorry, I'm so bad. Go ahead.
Okay, so I've been told that I did. I said Ann Kriebel. We thank her for her help in the transition. And Ann Kriebel actually transferred to TSC, and it's Ann Gerlach. So I want to thank her for her help, because I know she was instrumental in keeping things stable and moving forward. So thank her. And I hope that she wasn't watching. If she was, please make sure that. Okay, that's great. But if I need to talk to her personally and apologize, I will. If she heard that and it's like, I was the one who did that. So thank you to Ann. I had part of that name right. With that then, this is Board Appreciation Month, January. So I want to personally say to you, and everyone in our office wants to say, thank you to each one of you for your service. This recognition month was actually created back in 1995 by the National School Boards Association. But we're incredibly grateful for the dedication of each and every one of you, the hours that you put in to review our agendas, the time that you put into these meetings, and your oversight in general. We thank you, and we very much appreciate you. Your commitment to the betterment of our schools and the education of each and every one of our students is truly commendable. I'm grateful, and I know that every person on our team is grateful. And Mrs. Roberta, Mrs. Julian helped us put together these bags of appreciation. They're small notes of appreciation or expressions of appreciation, but they're from our heart. So thank you so much for all that you do for us. We really appreciate you and your time. Also, I want to give you an update on the junior, senior high principal search. We're preparing for our second round of interviews now. We've narrowed it down to 3 candidates. The first round of interviews went very well. We thank our tech department, Brandon, and your team for getting the virtual arrangements put together, because we did have, for that first round, we had 1 virtual interview. So thank you for your help in making that very successful. And then we thank all on our committee who have put time in for these interviews, participated so far. The second round of interviews will include the committee of teachers and administrators. Next round, we're going to add students. We want their input, and we're going to add a couple of parents on that committee as well. Those interviews will be this week. We will still do have the posting or the position posted. We are still accepting applications. We have received none to date, but we were committed to keeping that position posted until we actually fill the position. This next round, we hope to narrow it down to 2 candidates for an interview with Dr. Greiner, Mrs. Roth, Mrs. Kronk, and I'm requesting to our board president that we bring back those 3 board members that were originally appointed by the board so that we can hear input from a well-rounded group of individuals. And from there, Mrs. Roth, Dr. Greiner, myself, and Mrs. Kronk will look at all of the information that we've collected regarding feedback in the surveys, as well as feedback from the committees from the first round, as well as the second round. And then in that final stage, we are committed to finding an outstanding leader for this very important position.
Okay.
Finally, remember that next Monday, school will not be in session, January 15th. That is observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Those are my reports.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, there will be a work session on Friday, February 9th at 7 a.m., which is really hard for me, but we'll need to finish Dr. Greiner's evaluation. So we will go ahead and executive session, golly. Okay, so
You'll
it doesn't
to
have to be
sched-
at 7 a.m.
You need to schedule an executive session to finish.
Oh, wonderful. Well, then we'll do it not at 7 a.m. But if we need a work session, if someone feels the need of a work session before our next meeting, please email me whatever item you would like to see on the agenda and what your particular questions are, and be specific so that we can make excellent use of our staff members' time. Then our next regular board meeting will be Monday, February 12th at 6 p.m. Like Dr. Greiner said, we're not in school Monday. Tomorrow's looking a little iffy too. The 19th is a snow makeup day if needed. March 8th is the end of the 9 weeks, and March 11th to the 15th is spring break. And March 18th, school will resume. We are going to take a brief break in between this meeting and the finance meeting so that Mrs. Cronk can switch modes here, and I need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Mrs. Mumford, seconded by Mr. Wong. All those in favor of adjourning for 5 minutes and then coming back, please raise your hand. Okay, that's everybody. Thank you. order the finance meeting that we do once a year. You might remember that I'm also the president of this and Daisha's the secretary. So we get to change that first. So first thing we need to do is approve the agenda for the January 8th Board of Finance meeting. Can I get a motion? Moved by Mr. Marley. Second by Ms. Witt. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the agenda, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's everybody. Next thing is the selection of officers. I'm happy to continue as president of the finance, but I don't have to. Would anyone else like to make a nomination? Dr. Yin. Okay, Dr. Yin would like to nominate herself. Is there a second? Mr. Wong, thank you very much. And anyone else? Okay, I'm happy to yield the presidency. I don't need to run for it. So all those in favor of Dr. Yin being the president of the finance board, please raise your hand. Okay, that's everybody. Dr. Yin, go ahead. Do you need the agenda? Here.
So that just this agenda, right?
Yep. So you
I have this.
elect a secretary and then Mrs. Fromm
Yeah,
does-
so I have, yeah, okay, thanks. So then, and the next one will be, we need to elect the secretary. So who would like to nominate the secretary?
I'll nominate Daisha since he did it before, if that's okay.
I signed my name one time,
Yep.
so happy to.
It's a lot of work, isn't it?
Yeah, there's nothing, no leadership in this one.
Thank you. So any other nominations?
You
Sorry?
need a second.
Oh, second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Mrs. Witt, second the nomination. So, and Tisha accepted, right? So do we need another nomination? Yes, we do, right?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. And like the officers, we don't need a multiple nominations for this?
You could ask if anyone else wants, if there are any other nominations.
Yes, thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other nominations? Okay, hearing none, then, and vote for this, okay. And so if you agree to have Daisha as a secretary for this, then raise your hand. And so 7 agreed to have Daisha serve as a secretary for this. Okay. And the next one will be investing officers report and the investment register. Okay.
Okay, so the school district holds accounts with Huntington National Bank and had investments through Huntington Trust and the Hoosier Fund in 2023. Interest earned on all accounts for the period of December 1st, 2022 through November 30th, 2023 totaled, hold your hats, $594,272.76. And that does go into the education fund. So a breakdown of monthly interest in all accounts is included in your board packets. Currently, the district has 7 certificates of deposit that will mature over the next 2 years, all with around 5% interest rates. We appreciate the work that Huntington Bank did to restructure our accounts so that they were interest-bearing during this time of high investment interest rates, and all the other changes that they made for us this past year. And it's, you don't vote on it, it's just me sharing a report. Excuse me?
What's the Hoosier Fund rate?
So we no longer invest in the Hoosier Fund now, because it was actually a lower rate than the, what we were getting with Huntington. And so I can't tell you what that rate is now because we no longer use Hoosier funds.
Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I saw the rates expressed on the other bank CDs, but I didn't see
Yeah.
a rate expressed for the Hoosier Fund.
Yeah, it wasn't, because it was so complex having to have money in that account rather than our own account and then having multiple banks on our thing. I was like, you know what, it's not worth it. If we could get the same interest rate or better with our Huntington Bank account, then we're just going to keep our money in our account.
Are you still bidding through Baker Tilly?
Baker Tilly still does our bids for CDs,
Okay.
yes.
My compliments on your rates, by the way.
Yeah, they've
Nice
done a great
work.
job, so.
Any other suggestions, questions? So,
So then we just go on to the next item.
okay, yeah, just to try to give people enough waiting time.
Yeah.
As a teachers, kind of trained to do that. Okay, so, okay, then the next.
Okay, so fiscal indicators report. The Fiscal and Qualitative Indicators Committee was established under House Enrolled Act 1315 in 2018 to develop indicators used to evaluate the financial condition of school corporations. Indiana Code 5-13-7-8 requires Indiana school corporations to present the report on these indicators for review by the board at a public board meeting in January when the Board of Finance convenes. The fiscal indicators I'm sharing this evening are located on the Distressed Unit of Appeals Board's website under the Fiscal Indicators section. So I have quite a bit of information to share, and I know it's probably very tedious at 8:04 p.m. at night, so please bear with me. I'll try to make it as interesting as possible. So this is directly the PDF that comes from the DUAB's website that anybody has access to. They just need to go to the Distressed Unit of Appeals Board website. There's a fiscal indicators for school corporations, and every single school corporation is listed on that. So the first indicator graph outlines our average daily membership, or ADM, for the school corporation, showing both the fall count and the spring count, as we are funded for both now. These counts are what our school tuition support funding from the state is based upon. The graph shows data through 2022-23. As you can see, the school corporation's ADM has been pretty consistent over the years. For 23-24, our ADM is currently 2,209 for the fall count, down 39 students from last February. Please also remember the ADM does not include our transfer students from other districts that are paying tuition. The number of transfer students has been increasing over the past couple of years. Currently, we have approximately 140 transfer students, up from 110 that we billed for last year. The second indicator graph shows year-end fund balances across all different types of funds. Notice the bright green and the light pink for federal funds typically run in the negative, as we talked about before, they're reimbursement funds. So overall, the school corporation maintains appropriate and healthy cash balances in its funds to maintain operations if there were ever an emergency. God forbid, we do not want the state to ever hold back funding ever again, but we are in a good position to hold us if something like that were to ever happen. The third indicator graph shows the annual deficit or surplus for the district for all funds. Total revenue is indicated in the first column. Total expenses are shown in the second column, with the third column showing the difference between the two. As a whole, the school corporation ended 2022 with a surplus across all funds, due in part to the healthy cash balances that are maintained. Please remember that this does include all funds, including federal funds that typically run in the negative, and we are still showing a surplus. The fourth indicator graph shows the combination of budgeted fund cash balances, the education fund, operations fund, referendum fund, and rainy day fund, with the exception of debt service, as compared to total expenditures in those funds. The absolute minimum percent for the industry is 8.3%, or the equivalent of 1 month of expenditures. More acceptable industry standards call for at least 3 months to even 6 months worth of expenditures as a cash balance. So notice we have 51.9%. So we definitely, but we are also a smaller school corporation. So what would be considered a small change for a larger school corp is actually pretty big for us. So the school corporation has historically done a great job of conserving cash since we have that 51.9%. The fifth indicator graph shows revenue by type for each calendar year. As can be seen, total revenue has seen a slight increase over the years. The largest section in blue is our state tuition support revenue. Notice that even though our ADM has remained steady or even increased over the years, that state tuition support really remains fairly steady. And that's usually by design by the legislators. So robbing Peter to pay Paul, that still kind of balances out. So we're lucky that if we lose a few students, with the increase in the state tuition support, we still somewhat balance out. If we gain students, we get a little bit more money. There's usually not a lot of changes in that, though, especially if you remain pretty steady. And lastly, The last indicator graph shows our operating referendum revenue as a percent of total revenue. As of the end of 2022, our operating referendum amounted to 18.7% of total revenue across all funds for the school corporation. Notice the amount of revenue has been increasing. Sorry. This is due to the increased assessed values being taxed at the same rate. All else equal, without the referendum, we would have had approximately $6.73 million in educational and operational expenditures that would not have been covered in 2022 if we did not have the referendum. And those are the fiscal indicators that are required to be presented. Went fairly quickly. I didn't put anybody to sleep, so that's good.
Any questions, comments? Yeah, from training purpose, I wonder whether at some point we can have a sort of a work meeting to go through some of the details, just to better understand this. Sorry, I know my soft voices. So I wonder whether we can have some work sessions at some point to learn more about this school finance. So.
Yes, you have to tell me what exactly you want to learn about, because as Mr. Wong knows, there's a lot. And I could probably talk for 2 months straight on what we do. So it'd have to be very, very specific on what you're looking for. Okay?
Okay, thanks. Ms. Smith?
Mr. Wong, have you felt that the training that you have been pursuing, you've done additional training with regard to school finance, have you felt that it has explained some of these a little bit more fully so a board member could go get training and understand it better? Or is this matched up to what the training that you've been doing?
Well, the training, specifically the December the seminar is kind of different from this one. But yeah, I think there's some financial SBA, they have some trainings regarding how to read the financial report. And then if you join that, excuse me, if you join that seminar, it will be helpful. But I mean, the December seminar is really kind of detailed, practical. I mean, CFO, how to bookkeeping things, how to handle different kind of complicated situations, and the legal regulations, that kind of thing. But for board members, the SBA financial reporting seminar will be helpful for us. That's my understanding.
Yeah, lots of questions. The finance seminar for us, so.
Yeah, for board members, I think most of the time we're just reading the financial report. There are some state required financial report. If we can understand that, we can understand the school overall.
Yeah, the ISBA stuff is geared more towards board members looking at the overarching type of things, whereas, like what I go to through the Indiana Association of School Business Officials really delves down deep into a lot of the day-to-day stuff that I do, so.
Okay, so if there's no more questions, suggestions, then I guess that's the last item, right? So to adjourn the meeting, so we need.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Oh, I move we adjourn the meeting.
No, I do.
You do.
You-
Okay,
you
we
need
need
a
a second. Okay. Okay, second. Okay, Mr. Wang, second to adjourn the meeting, then vote. Yeah, let's vote to adjourn the meeting. And 7 versus 0. We adjourn the meeting. Thanks.